What you see is a book that is written and produced by Denise Crittendon. Denise Crittendon is a longtime writer and a person who has been interested in issues not just related to the things that she's written about in the actual press and so on, but in this particular case, this is called Girl in a Mirror, a Teen's Guide to Self-Awareness. She joins us on this edition of For My People. Now, Denise, could you tell me a little bit about this book? What led you to write this?
Well, that's an interesting question, Ron, and there's kind of a story behind it. I left Detroit for a while. I've been a journalist for a few years, for many years, actually.
Many years. Right.
Yeah, let's tell the truth. And when I first returned to Detroit, I started volunteering at a girls' home in Dearborn. It's called Vista Maria Girls' Home, and it's a volunteer program for people to come into the home and give spiritual counseling sessions to the girls. Most of the heart movers took the Bible, but I tended to want to give the girls life skills along with spiritual concepts. After one of my sessions, you know, and I was really drumming in the importance of positive thinking and the usage of affirmations. After one session, one of the girls asked me if I had a book she could read, and I was really touched by that. At the time, I had a book with me. It's called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. So I handed this young girl the book, but after I left that day, I started thinking, well, you know, this book, it deals with adult concerns and adult problems. And so I went looking for a book specifically for teens, you know, dealing with the same principles. I could not find one. And that's actually how this was born. Now,
we're talking in this particular case about girls who, as we look at it today, they're dealing with things that maybe someone like yourself did not deal with today. You're talking about issues of parenthood, not to say that it didn't exist before,
right,
but in a major way, parenthood, right, and major self-esteem issues, materialism and so on. How do you deal with that in this book?
Well, what I try to explain to the girls in the book is that their minds are sort of like computers. I may not put it exactly that way, but I want them to understand that they're being programmed all the time, and it's up to them to learn how to control the program. Now, you talked about, Ron, the fact that young people today are dealing with so many issues. We grappled with some of those same issues when we were young. However, we weren't being bombarded with as many negative messages as our young people today. It seems like everyone is competing for their minds. If you turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, you go to the movies, those messages are pretty much geared to young people. They're not really trying to reach us. They know that we're already, our ideas or our values are etched in stone, and we're not the main consumers. They're after young people, and so I'm trying to empower young women. A lot of people stress the self-esteem aspect of the book, and that is important. It does deal with self-esteem, but more important is the character development and the self-empowerment that comes from understanding that you are in charge of the program in your own mind.
Now, it's interesting, as you go from chapter to chapter, you make reference to various people that would be known by these young people. You talk about everybody from Aretha Franklin to Jada Pinkett to LL Cool J. And why do you do that?
That's a good question, too. Because I wanted to pattern this book after other self-help books that are out there. I wanted for teens, teen girls, to have their own self-help book. Now, in most self-help books, there are references to great minds, and generally some of the chapters will begin with quotes. Who do they quote? People like Mohandas Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Gwendolyn Brooks, or Rosa Parks, or Wayne Dyer, scholars of the past and the present. But I felt like if I really want to reach young people, and I really wanted them to read this book, Ron, I didn't want young people to pick up the book and say, oh, this is something someone is trying to force on me. I wanted them to understand, our young women, that this is a book that's genuinely theirs, and by using their icons, it's a ploy, it's an attention getter.
I guess another thing is that you're really attempting to get young girls to actually read.
Yes.
I mean, because that's the bottom line. I mean, we talk about, certainly in our community, that's a major effort.
Yes, yeah.
In terms of that, you talk about affirmations. Could you go over some of the principles that you deal with and why you employ that?
Well, the affirmation or the principles you're talking about, I call them spiritual tools. Spiritual tool number one, affirmations. Now, when I talked about the fact that our brains are like computers, as a matter of fact, the computer is designed after the human brain, I emphasize that the way that we control our program, our lives, is to take control of our own thoughts. Now, if you have a mind that's filled with negative thoughts and you are conditioned to think that way and you want to clear out the program, you want to replace it with new thoughts, what do? You take a positive statement that you say over and over again. An affirmation is a positive statement that you make about yourself. And I emphasize to the girls this is done with repetition. If you say this positive statement over and over again, after a matter of a few months, sometimes a few weeks, you actually can form, Ron, a new neural pathway in your own mind.
Or if you do stuff like what you hear people saying in some of the popular music of the day, they use a word that's not so positive about young women, then that forms a neural pathway also.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's what I'm trying to get them to understand, is that they're being programmed all the time anyway, so they might as well get behind the wheel of their own minds and steer, because this negative stuff that they're hearing, it's sinking in, and as you pointed out, it's also forming those pathways and conditioning them, because when you say an affirmation, I understand it feels a little funny at first because you don't always believe it, but you're basically trying to convince yourself. But the more you say it, gradually, the more you begin to believe it. And
from the economic standpoint, now obviously you're not trying to make a killing on this book. You really want to get it out there.
The purpose of the book is to empower young women, and I just want to get the message out there. And for that reason, I've donated about 500 copies to different girls' homes and programs for young women. And at this point, you know, I just can't donate all of them because it's a self-published effort. If I donate all of them, I wouldn't make any money and I wouldn't be able to publish more. So at this point, I'm contacting corporations, and some of them have agreed to cooperate with us to get them to buy blocks of books to donate, so we continue the process.
I would assume that a number of the books that you're getting out there are going specifically to young African American women.
Yes, the books are going to African American women. That the community has been very responsive. But if you look at the cover, Ron, I did make an attempt to make it multicultural. And some of the icons, or I guess figureheads that our young women look up to, are not black. I do refer to a lot of African Americans, as you mentioned. Who did you mention? LL Cool J, Jada Pinkett, Queen Latifah, and Brandy, etc. But I also quote Tara Lipinski and Julia Roberts. I'm trying to keep it universal. I think that because, you know, I'm African American, and because we're in a, you know, predominantly African American city, the message will be embraced more by African American young women. But it is not a message that is race specific.
But you are distributing this nationwide?
At a certain point, that's my prayer. Right now it's local, you know, and I'm trying to contain it because I'm not in bookstores yet nationwide, and every now and then I'll get a call from someone out of town, or a bookstore will get a call and someone has found out about the book. But at this point we're trying to keep it local until it's out there, and that's part of the plan.
I want to come back to bookstores, but you gave me a natural transition. You mentioned prayers. You mentioned prayers in the book.
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that? Because
prayers are another spiritual tools. I'll go through all of them, Ron. The first spiritual tool, affirmations. Second spiritual tool, learning to love yourself, which can be accomplished through affirmation, or something as simple as looking in the mirror every single morning and just saying, I love you. Okay, another spiritual tool, visualization. And that is, in addition to affirming or declaring something, actually seeing this image in your mind. And I share with the girls that Olympic athletes who are trying to achieve a certain goal, not only do they have to practice, they actually have to picture themselves achieving whatever it is. Another spiritual tool, gratitude. Understanding that the more grateful you are for what you do have in your life, the more that enables you to attract more positive things into your life. Another spiritual tool, faith. Something as basic as faith. And prayer. Prayer is the spiritual tool that we know the most about.
In relationship to this, Denise, you published through the the Detroit Writers Guild.
Yes.
And this is a self-published activity.
It is a self-published book.
And so, essentially, as I said, this is your effort to the community.
It really is, Ron, because one of the great blessings of being self-published is that you have control. If, first time out, I had used a publishing company, there's no way I would have been able to donate that many books. I'm not sure how it works, but I think I would have had to forego like a certain amount of whatever the percentage goes to the author in order to get a block of books like that and actually donate myself. Now, second time around, I will be going through a major publisher, but this local effort gives me that opportunity.
And that follows since you're the editor of African American Parents magazine. So
yeah.
I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this. Are these in black bookstores?
Yes. Would you like for me to name a few? The Shrine of the Black Madonna, of course.
Well, you can promote them, but around the city, they're
black bookstores, but not all black bookstores. They're in some others too.
Okay. All right. For My People has been speaking with Denise Crittendon, and we've been talking about this book. It's called Girl in the Mirror, and it is a basic element in terms of self-awareness for young African-American women in particular, and young women in general. And we'd like to thank her for joining us on this edition of For My People, because it is something that is timely, and we thank her for doing this, and we'll see how the book goes.